So, hello everyone, and I'd like to firstly say thank you so much for Joann Benjamin and Ruth Dismuke-Blakely, for joining me today to talk about the work that they have been up to. And they presented at the ISES conference with their work. So, I would love for you guys to introduce yourselves and what you guys have been up to, and we can have a chat about it.
My name's Joann Benjamin. I am a physical therapist and I live in Los Angeles, California. For many years, I have had the wonderful opportunity to be able to incorporate horses into my treatment. First, working with adults and more recently, working with younger children and having the opportunity to use that equine movement to bolster what we're doing in physical therapy. I've also had the opportunity to work closely with the American Hippotherapy Association, a very strong love of mine in terms of working on the faculty and helping to share some education of what that tool is all about for other therapists who are interested in incorporating equine movement into their treatment. And Ruth and I have had the fortune to have worked together for many, many years closely with AHA. So, Ruth.
So I'm Ruth Dismuke-Blakely. I am a speech language pathologist and horsewoman from Edgewood, New Mexico. And like Joann, I have been incorporating horses and more specifically equine movement as a specialty treatment tool into clinical practice, honestly, since 1978. So for a very long time. I currently, and actually for the last 43 years, have operated a full-time therapy clinic providing physical, occupational, and speech and language therapy for many years to both children and adults, and then since 2009, specifically for children with special needs. And again, we specialize in using equine movement as part of our treatment. Like Joann, I am on the American Hippotherapy Association faculty and have been very involved with many aspects of that association in our mission to share with the world our American model of how we incorporate hippotherapy into our clinical practice in speech therapy and occupational therapy and physical therapy.
Wonderful. So we have some true experts and pioneers here, so I'm very excited to be talking to you about that today. So who are, first of all, before we dive into it, who are the American Hippotherapy Association? What do they do? What are they up to?
We are a national organization, actually, with members from all over the world, primarily therapists. So, again, it's physical, occupational, and speech therapists that are members who are interested in incorporating equine movement into their practice. I think the mission has been primarily education, and we very much want to share what we have learned over the years with that American model, with therapists again in the US and North America, as well as countries all over.
Wonderful. Thank you
And
so much. Oh, yeah,
in
sorry.
addition to, well, in addition to that, in our development of sort of a core curriculum for therapy professionals to take so that they have a really good understanding of the impact of equine movement on human physiology, then we also provide quite a bit of advocacy and general education to the public to really validate and protect our right as treating therapists to use equine movement in our treatment.
Wonderful. Thank you. And could you just walk, maybe Joanne and then Ruth, just walk us through uh, the day-to-day working with clients, maybe working with other organizations. How does it work?
Mm, Well, as a physical therapist, I am uh, working in my practice much as I would in a variety of settings. We will have our patients come in, do a thorough evaluation of what their needs are, what the impairments are that might be creating some challenges for them in their day-to-day life, and then coming up with a treatment plan, establishing goals to achieve so that we can help them be the best that they can be. And very often, not always, but very often, using that equine movement can be something as a part of that treatment plan to really get them to the goalpost, if you will, of achieving the goals that they really want to master. So the day-to-day is similar to any type of treatment in terms of PT, OT, or speech. The differences might be that at that point where we're incorporating the equine movement, we're obviously going to be in a larger space where we can work with the horses and have access to some different environmental attributes that really make the treatment very interesting and very often motivating for our patients. So we have a few extra perks that come along with the treatment that we are able to offer.
Wonderful.
And I would add to that, it would be very similar in my clinical practice. I would add to that we're always looking at how we can use that equine movement to facilitate all the neuromotor systems that support functional skills so that our patients outside of therapy are able to perform their activities of daily living at a higher level and be more independent. And then within the context on a day-to-day basis of using hippotherapy as a treatment tool, we are always looking at how to nuance the horse's performance through skilled handling, skilled conditioning and training of those horses, and really attending to the welfare of the horse, not only for the horse's benefit, but because it's also going to produce better clinical outcomes for our patient populations, be they adults or children, across that broad spectrum of therapists that incorporate this as a specialty tool.
Wonderful. It really sounds like you can be so impactful for people and in such a unique way as well. So that's lovely to hear. Talking about the horses, so do you have particular candidates that you pick at being horses, and do you pair them with people that the horse might be more skilled at upskilling, maybe? So if you could just talk through maybe the horse side, the horse process.
Oh, absolutely. There's no one perfect therapy horse because there's such a broad range of patient populations that we're treating, but we look at the mechanics of each horse's movement patterns and then look at how that movement is going to best facilitate that patient's needs. And then very often we have patients who are also drawn to the horse and the equine environment. And sometimes there's personalities that just fit together really well in addition to that.
That's great. And
So
sorry,
we
did you
can
want to say?
take those mechanics, if you will, be it the movement that they provide, but also the sensory impact that they provide. So it's really interesting when you start to analyze it. Horses are very individual in the ways that they move, in the ways that they interact with the world. And so we are always looking and trying to understand as best we can what that individual horse has to offer, and then how it can complement or challenge our patients
Mhm.
to be able to, again, achieve those goals. And then on top of all of that, as Ruth mentioned earlier, the movement is so important to the quality. And so, what really adds to the whole picture is the person who is handling the horse for us and what they are able to get out of that horse's ability to move. So they can be conditioned and fit and trained for this discipline we call hippotherapy for the horse. And then we really rely on a very skilled handler who can do a performance, if you will, or performance leading or long lining to really bring out the best from those horses.
Definitely. That's
Remembering that if the average horse takes 50 to 55 strides per minute, that translates for us to about 100 steps per minute that the patient is experiencing. And so just putting that in perspective, just 5 minutes of walking on that horse represents 500 repetitions to the patient. So if we think about 15 or 20 minutes of movement for that patient, you're talking about 1,500 to 2,000 repetitions. First, we don't have any other therapy tools that can provide that sort of sustainable, high quality input. And second, it becomes even more important that that quality of movement be inherent in that horse in terms of that nuanced performance so that we're impacting our patient in the most appropriate manner that we can.
definitely. That sounds incredible. It really, really does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really, really does. It does sound like a lot of collaboration and work goes into it. With all of the a team basically working together. So how does this team, so like the therapists, the horse handlers, and horses all work together to shape movement for a particular patient?
Well, it becomes very important that we as therapists interact with our horse handlers, our horse staff, and help them make them good technicians or therapy aides, if you will, so that they understand what the needs of each patient are. And then there is, exactly as you say, that collaboration or dialogue between the therapist and the horse handler about A, which horse might have the most appropriate movement characteristics for that patient, what equipment we're going to want to use, and then what kind of handling and what will be needed during that movement phase of the treatment session. And it's kind of an ongoing dialogue. And the beauty of having well-trained horse handlers on staff is that it becomes like a well-executed dance, and they get to where they understand what I need or what Joann needs as a treating therapy professional, and it just sort of evolves in a beautiful way. And actually the horses become part of that dance because even they become very aware of what their performance expectations are. And so it's wonderful treatment. It's wonderful.
That sounds very inspiring. So I really have enjoyed listening to this, but the one of the last things I wanted to touch on, or I have a couple more questions, but is there a particular it would be nice to hear some stories. So is there a particular patient story or moment that really kind of solidified and helped you understand the power of equine movement? Maybe in therapy, maybe an earlier example or a recent one.
Oh, there are so many.
I'm sure. Or
I have
maybe
had so
stories.
many children. Yeah, I've had so many children, take their first steps or say their first words at our facility. I do remember one adult, a gentleman who had been a professor at the University of New Mexico, who actually, quite frankly, was about 15 years post traumatic brain injury. And he came in unable to walk. He was in a wheelchair and really only had 3 words: yes, no, and good. And yet, intellectually or cognitively, he was still very intact, but he had what we call Broca's aphasia, and he couldn't talk. And we saw him twice a week in a combined physical therapy, speech therapy paradigm. And 6 weeks later, after really not talking for 15 years, this gentleman is talking in 3 and 4 word sentences, telling me about playing soccer in South Africa. And just being able, we as therapists often need to remember that patients don't stop progressing, that we just don't have the right tools to access them. And in his case, the equine movement was profound in reconnecting aspects and areas of his brain to allow him to communicate again. And then, ironically, after about 4 months of therapy, he was actually up walking in canes. And so, I mean, that's just a pretty amazing outcome, especially given the time lag between his injury and the time that we got to see him.
Amazing. I love it. That's fantastic. Joann, would you like to add an experience that you've had?
Yeah, and it's funny. It's those ones that sort of stand out. And we had a young girl who had an unfortunate occurrence at the time of her birth, where there is damage to her cerebellum, and that very much controls your ability to use controlled or coordinated movement. And I actually started working with her in her home. And it was, we were making some slow progress, but one of her major problems was that her movement was so erratic that walking was not only very difficult for her from an energy standpoint, but also very unsafe because she just could not stand. And using a walker, using any kind of device was just not workable for her. And it was funny because we decided that using hippotherapy as part of her treatment might be something beneficial for her. And we brought her out to the ranch, and we were able to incorporate that as part of her treatment. And I was a little bit chagrined because I had worked with her for 6 months doing therapy that I felt was very well put together, and then got her on a horse. And it only took about 2 or 3 weeks before what I estimated was the rhythmic input, the symmetrical input, the coordinated effort that the horse was producing, kind of lending it to her. In any case, no matter how good my therapy was off of the horse prior to that, the horse just helped me put it together. And within 3 weeks, she was up and walking with a walker. And within about 6 months, was actually walking with a small cane, what we call a Canadian crutch. So it was very profound. And I learned my lesson. I thought that's a tool that really can help enhance what I'm doing in my physical therapy practice.
It's so nice to be able to hear the stories of you guys really putting this work to in action, and hearing those stories it's actually blown me away. I didn't re well you hearing I read the abstract and I saw it was some really really cool work, but hearing those stories really kind of solidifies it for me. So that's fantastic. Just one last question, which is more of a general question, because I can absolutely assume the horses are incredibly well looked after, receive top-notch care. But given how active their role is in therapy, how do you take measures, both physically and emotionally, to ensure their welfare is supported during and outside of sessions?
Well, that's an ongoing process because, and so our preference is to not use a volunteer workforce, but to actually have a team of skilled horse handlers that work back and forth with us therapists. And we are constantly monitoring their physical and emotional health and develop protocols so that they're not just walking around or trotting around in therapy, but that they're actually have a variety of things that they're doing, that they get some turnout and some social time and some other kinds of work activities to keep them mentally and physically fit and engaged. And then you're always monitoring for stress because many people think of using hippotherapy as sort of a great old retirement home for horses. And actually, it's quite demanding work. It needs to be performance-based, and they're often dealing with a lot of different kinds of physical and emotional behavioral presentations from our patients. So those horses need to have a good relationship with their handlers so that they can essentially convey or communicate to their handlers when they're either uncomfortable physically or they're just feeling the stress of, dealing with somebody who might have an unusual way of presenting themselves. And it's an ongoing process. There's not a simple, succinct answer to it, because horses are complicated as individuals. But there is a great deal of effort by the American Hippotherapy Association to keep educating and promoting horse welfare and an understanding of what the horse's needs are within the context of treatment.
And did you want to add, Joann? Yeah.
Some of a game changer in my mind, honestly, having taught about this tool for so many years, was the 5 domains model, and to really be able to embrace that, because I think we have done a wonderful job of using evidence-based information for our treatment paradigms, because coming about it as therapists, that's a part of our education and practice as therapists. But to be able to have a little bit more structured way, objective way to look at what does the horse need and what is evidence-based in terms of what makes their lives more able to cope with the work that they're doing, enjoy the work that they're doing, and enhance their longevity. And I think we've been doing this long enough to realize not only the importance of that longevity and ability to participate at peak levels, but also even from a welfare model, it's so much easier and so much more productive when we've got horses that we can pair with for long periods of time, rather than a model of just a revolving door, if you will. So taking care of them is so important on so many different levels. But that 5 domains model, I think, is just really essential for us, and we're really trying to promote that in our educational process as well.
That's fantastic. Thank you both. And putting what you basically said the same thing, but kind of different, because as Ruth said about the complexities of individuality as a horse, and also people and handlers, and I totally understand you're dealing with such different people and such different horses that have individual needs and care plans, that, or plans even for your patients that you're dealing with, and then incorporating the 5th domain being mental state, that subjective experience. So yeah, it is complex, but it's really nice to hear both patients and horses are very well looked after. So just finally, where can people contact you if they'd like to find out more?
At the American Hippotherapy Association.org. The AHA website has a great deal of information, and certainly both Joann and mine's information is there under the faculty. And the American Hippotherapy Association is quite dedicated on not just a national level, but an international level, of helping to share the way we've been able to establish sort of a medical model that incorporates hippotherapy as a specialty treatment tool, and being sure that it's balanced in meeting the needs of our patients, meeting the needs of our horses, educating our therapists for safe and effective use of this tool, and just, presenting the whole picture. And so I would encourage people to reach out to the American Hippotherapy Association.org.
Amazing. Anything to add on that, Joann?
No, I would love to hear from folks. We really want to continue to allow this tool to grow and be of benefit to anybody who can partake.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. So thank you so much for meeting with me.
Our pleasure.
Very, very much. Thank you.